Put that cookie down, Dustin.
Well, I'm glad you guys did the Arnold impersonation. So Arnold is obviously a legend, and he took you under his wing. What was one piece of advice that he gave you that stuck with you?
He offered to fly me out to work out with me at Gold's Venice. He talks about all sorts of topics, but throughout the whole thing, he would talk a lot about vision, how important vision was to like everything he had done and how it applied to all these different topics. And later on, like after that, of course, I didn't know at the time, I would go back and find like this has been a theme in speeches he's given. It shows up in books he's written, but it's very organic to him. You can tell it's how he like built his whole life. Whatever the topic is, the vision is what goes through it all. And so in hindsight, like when stuff has gotten harder, that has always stuck with me. Like it was that he knew where he wanted to be at the end, and he wasn't there. He didn't necessarily know like all the granular steps, and it wasn't necessarily going to be like a, an even path to get there, but the vision was there.
Dave, Danna, welcome officially to the Present Fathers podcast. We sort of had you on, I forget how long ago, quite a while ago. We did kind of a space with you and recorded it, kind of posted as an episode. But since then, man, you've lost even more weight. You've gotten married, and you're an expecting father. So welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. We're so honored to welcome you to the Fatherhood Club. So Dave, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a bit of a wait, but a few other things had to happen first, like you mentioned. I don't even think I was engaged the last time we spoke. I'm not exactly sure how that was, but when I started, I guess, backing up my health and weight loss journey at over 400 pounds, I was not only not engaged, but I was also completely single. So in the last, whatever, it's been 2.5 years, a number of things have changed. One of them being me getting married and my wife getting pregnant, and now I can join you on the podcast, which is of course my pleasure. Just 60 seconds or so on where I started out in the summer of 2022. A few things came together that I guess were eye-opening to me in terms of needing to make a few changes physically, mentally, and in a few other places. One of them being over 400 pounds. I can't give an exact weight because if you've seen some of my earlier videos, I was getting an error on my scale, which was one of the wake-up calls that I didn't know was a thing. I guess pre-COVID, it was starting with a 3 back then, which was bad, but an error was a lot worse. The scale starts speaking English, and it's a real problem. And so a few other things happened around that time point. I flew for the first time since the pandemic, and I had to ask for if they had a seatbelt extender or if that was like a thing I didn't know was a thing. And I guess just it never crossed my mind. And again, it took a few years off of air travel because all my work didn't stop traveling and whatnot. And so that was another wake up call. And then a lot has transpired in the last, I guess, 2.5 years, but down about 150 pounds, engaged, married, expecting father, still trying to squeak in the last 50, 60 pounds before my son is born. It's a race now to the end of September, but I don't want to bore you too much with the background, but that's where we are.
Dave, congratulations.
Thank you.
Nothing boring about that, bro.
It's
That's
been a
awesome.
crazy 2 or 3 years, yeah.
Super exciting. So Dave, walk me through the moment that your wife told you that she was pregnant. How did you feel? I want to hear everything about that moment.
So it's kind of wild. No one's actually ever asked me, but it's kind of wild how it happened. I was on a work trip in California at the end of January. My wife had never been to California, and I have family in the Bay Area, so she came out after that. She claims she didn't know before then. We'll see. But one of the things that was dawning on me when we were visiting my family in the Bay Area was that this wouldn't have been possible 2 years prior. One, because I wasn't married at the time or dating, but also because I couldn't fit in an airplane seat. I certainly didn't have like the mental strength to buy 2 plane seats, or I don't even know what you do at that point in time. It was already sort of a more meaningful trip to me than like just an accounting trip for work to like sign off on systems implementation. That was not so meaningful, to be honest. But she walks in one morning, and we had been trying, but not for long. And we're both in our early 30s. I still had some weight to lose. I wasn't thinking it would necessarily happen that quickly. And she says, I have these like early tests. Do you want like to be with me when I take one? Like they're like 7 days earlier than the other ones. I don't know any of this, but like, and so I'm sure, like, of course, like especially because I'm like a little bit suspicious at this point. And so sure enough, she takes it, and like whatever, 10 minutes later, it's positive. And I'm like, no way. Like, we haven't been trying. Also, like, it's happening in California. We just the night before, I took her out to this nice restaurant, had this whole discussion about how like what sort of a big deal it was for me to be here, even though it was a work trip, just because I could do it, but had like a lot. I got like weirdly deep for me eating a steak that usually doesn't happen. And now the next morning, I'm like speechless looking at this little thing, and I'm like in my head, because I'm an accountant, I'm like, okay, but it's the early one. Like, how reliable is this? Like, am I a dad right now? Like, is it? And so then, like, couldn't focus at all that day. It was the last day of sign off. It was like a big day for me at work. No idea what happened. I guess I got through it. And then the next day we were going, because she came right at the end of the work part of the trip. We were going to stay with my aunt and uncle. And I was like, wait, I have to not suspiciously get to like a CVS or something to buy like unlimited more of these to see if they're all positive. And over the next like 2 or 3 days, like she took a few more and they were all positive. I was like, I think at this point, like we should figure out like, what do you do now? Like call like a lady doctor, someone with like a fancy degree tells us, right? And she was like, no. I'm like, we'll do that. But like she was also like, I'm definitely pregnant at this point. And so like it was on some degrees, it was sort of less dramatic and way different than I ever expected, because I was on a work trip in California, like working 12 hours, like trying to get like the Accenture to consultants to like do all this technical nonsense. And on the other hand, it being on a cross country trip, which I hadn't gone on in years either, made it a lot more meaningful.
Man, that's so good. I love
Yeah,
that.
sorry to ramble there for you, but
No,
that's what I learned. Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff we want to ramble about, man, because being a dad and expecting to be a dad is like the coolest experience, and anyone who says otherwise is a loser. So we want to hear all about it. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was gonna say, finding out is like the, oh man, this is getting real part of your marriage, right? So it's exciting.
Yes,
It's always fun, and you'll never forget exactly when and where and what everything was when you find out. So it's one of those core memories as a dad. So it's awesome. But let's start with that brutal moment in 2022 where you were needing the seatbelt extender on the flight.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying you were over 400 pounds. You were feeling alone. Can you kind of take us back to that low point and like what stirred in you as a man that just kind of made you say enough is enough? Like what prompted you to start the journey?
Yeah, so it was 2 or 3 things. One of them being the error on the scale. One of them being that seatbelt extender. But then the other thing was what happened was I needed the seatbelt extender first. When I got back from that trip, I thought I need to get on the scale, because I never used to need a seatbelt. I had been bigger, but I never needed a seatbelt extender. Then I got the error message on my scale when I got back from that trip. That would have been like the end of May of 22, like, and then those two things combined with the fact that I had just turned 30 and I had just moved into a house that had a staircase. And the stairs, I grew up in a house with a staircase. Like, it wasn't, stairs are normal, but it was like way more, not like problematic, I don't want to exaggerate, but I was like winded, and it was like I was sweating, and I was like, yeah, I live in South Carolina, but it's air conditioned and it shouldn't be happening. And at 30 is, when I was in my 20s, it was old, but now that I was 30, it didn't feel like I was old. And those things combined, because my bedroom was upstairs. I would go upstairs to go to bed, and then I would think about why I was so winded getting up the stairs. And it hit me that, like, on this trajectory, if this is 30, I don't know if I can accomplish a lot of the stuff in terms of career, in terms of, meeting a girl, getting married, becoming a father, anything you want to do, if I've already let myself go, or to this extent. And so something happened. I get asked quite often, like, I have an ex relative or ex friend, they need to do some version of what you did. Like, how do I get them to do it? And I've never been able to answer that question well, because I don't know. and no one was able to convince me beforehand. So I'm not sure how I would convince someone else to do it. It had to be those things hitting me, and then within 2 or 3 days, I had gotten a gym membership. I was figuring out, I didn't know what diet I wanted to follow, right? Because you look online and there's endless people with all sorts of experience and credentials, and they're doing the exact opposite things, and they all look fantastic. And so, how do you decide, right? It's overload. You just instantly overloaded. It's not helpful at all. It's one of the reasons, honestly, I don't talk as much about some of the specifics, because you just instantly get into these like niche wars with other people who are like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, I don't know. I'm an accountant. I'm just doing what's been working, right? And so, but
Yep.
that all to say, I started with what I knew I shouldn't have anymore. So I like a lot of fast food was cut out, junk food, stopped drinking alcohol, cut out liquid calories, and like I slowly made over time my way towards like a more low carb diet, which is what I'm mostly stuck with. But again, I specifically don't call it keto. It's definitely not carnivore, and it wasn't even necessarily how I started. But to get back to your original question, it was just a confluence of a few things happening within a few weeks, and that really triggered me initially. And then the secondary part, to expand it out, was it would have been like September of that year, and I have the results. I have them in my safe. I went to a doctor for the first time in probably 10 years. Um, One, because like I didn't, in my 20s, I didn't think about going to a doctor, and two, by the time I did, I knew I'd be bad enough that I didn't want to hear exactly what they were going
to
to
get the
say.
results.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I've been working since college. I have insurance. It wasn't any type of like issue except with me not wanting to go. But I finally went, and that would have been like, I think it was September. It was several months after I had started, and those results were: you're still 375 pounds. You're pre-diabetic. You have high blood pressure. Your resting heart rate is 114. And if you're having trouble sleeping, it's probably because you have some form of sleep apnea, but you've never had a sleep test. And I was like, okay, but really, I thought I was doing great. So it was those initial things in May or whatever, May and June, and then months later, because the doctor, it was the first time seeing the doctor. They had no idea that I had been working for like 3 months, and the fact that I was 370 was like, actually, the fact that I can get a number on my scale at home, that's good. I was thinking the most discouraging month of the whole journey was the fact that for the first 4 weeks I kept getting the error, and so like, but when I went to the doctor, it was still all bad, and that sort of reinforced to me that like it's going to take a lot longer. I must have been way worse 3 or 4 months ago, and I really like I can't stop, because I had seen progress in myself. I wasn't getting an error anymore. I was out of the 400s, but it was like years of work ahead. It was sort of
Yeah.
the message that came across, and also that was more reinforcing because that was more scientific. It was more like a medical professional. I had
It's
actual
like raw and in
results.
your
Yeah,
face.
it was like I am a numbers guy. These are all numbers. They're all bad, right? That was it worked very well for me. I could see the progress, but from a professional standpoint, who didn't know where I was 6 months ago, the doctor was like, yeah, we need to like start talking about medications that you shouldn't need to be on as a 30-year-old if these numbers don't improve like pretty quickly, right? Like we don't actually want, like none of them were in like the immediate zone, but it was like the pre-diabetes can't become diabetes, right? The like borderline, whatever it's called, like stage 1 of high blood pressure can't get any worse. It has to come back down, right? Like the resting heart rate, like, okay, maybe you're nervous, whatever. It can't be over 100 for sure. Really can't be, anywhere close to it either, especially at your age, even if we take into account, nerves or whatever, right? And so that was a that was a wake up call that happened several months later, because those first few months were easily the hardest, especially at the beginning, like I mentioned, because I kept
Yeah.
getting the error. It wasn't like I weighed myself 2 days later and I was in the 390s or something. No, it was like 5 weeks later.
Right. Well, so I want to kind of go backwards based off
Yeah.
your conversation right there. So first off, that initial kind of moment of adversity, right? This is something everyone has to face, whatever your challenge is, right? Whatever the thing you're trying to conquer is, whether it's weight, maybe it's defeating some type of addiction, maybe whatever, right? There's going to be this moment where you feel you've made some progress, and or you do a thing like 75 hard or whatever, right? You do something for a couple months. You can kind of willpower your way through anything for a few months. And then a lot of people kind of backslide because of that moment. They hit that first point of adversity or that first point of like setback or kind of just that raw realization that you've only just begun, and a lot of people give up. So I just want to commend you, Dave, for really sticking to it for real. Standing on your conviction and not giving up at the first sign of trouble, and knowing that you had a real battle ahead of you, but actually following through. And then I wanted to touch on real quick the statement you made about like, people asking, well, how do I help this family member or so-and-so? They're in a similar situation. How do I convince them? The honest truth is you can't. Yeah. You just can't. Yeah. You can only help them when they decide for themselves they want it, whatever that may be, right? Like I said, it could be weight, it could be addiction, it could be they're maybe not being a good husband, any of that kind of stuff. If someone has not decided for themselves that they want to make a change, there is nothing anyone else can say to them to make it for them. So that's a word of caution to everyone listening to this, that don't over-invest yourself in people who aren't willing to receive, and that's a dangerous game. You see a lot of people burning a lot of their own energy and then kind of sacrificing even their own families to try and like save this lost little lamb type of situation. And unless that person has decided they want to change, none of your help is actually going to help. Now, in this case, Dave, let's use your example. The second you decided for yourself, I want this, and like maybe one of us had known you at the time, and you would have like, hey man, where do I even start? We absolutely would have helped you because you've already demonstrated the willingness to receive, right? So I just want to really drive that point home, because we all know someone who's struggling with something that we just really wish we could help them with. But it's just a word of caution. You have to protect your own sanity and your family's, health as well by not over-investing in people who haven't really made that hard decision for themselves yet. So I think Justin has something for you, but I assume you'd want to respond to this too, Dave, so I'll stop.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think that's a good caveat to add. After I took that first step, I got tons of help from all sorts of people, online and offline. But it really, that first step is the key. And it's hard to give that answer. It's probably my most common question, or like after like, how'd you meet Arnold? Probably maybe second most. But like, it's not the answer they want to hear, but I don't feel like I can give them anything else. Like it's just because they've already tried, right? That's not the first time. I'm not the first person they're asking, and that's not the first time they've tried. And so it's just like, I'd rather just be honest, but I know I'm letting you down with that answer. But also, once you see someone take that first step, it was really important to me. And I in hindsight, I wish I had asked for more help, but I also wish other people had jumped in at like, okay, step number 2, like, let's go. Don't like, one of the weird things about, I don't know if it's because I'm in the South or it's because that's how like modern medicine works these days, is I got those results from the doctor, but I didn't get a whole lot of discussion about lifestyle stuff that would have probably been nice to hear. Even if it was not the lifestyle I chose, I'm not sure he would have been like, hey, low carb with a lot of meat. Like, probably not. But like, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about what I could do to continue on once I had explained what I was doing. Now, interestingly, as I went back over time and they saw my weight dropping, there was a lot more discussion. And I wonder if that's because they knew I was actually doing it, but also a lot less useful because if the scale's already dropping that much, right, I figured something out, right? It was really, and so I do wish, I think it's a very good addition to the point I made, and also something I wish I had both had more of and probably asked for. Like, I'm sure if I'd asked online, people would have, but it's hard to ask for help, right?
Yeah. Well, one last thing on that too, is that's a mentality I see with a lot of men, and Justin has a question for you. I'm going to kick it to him, but I see this a lot with men where they think by asking for help they're going to be a burden to someone.
Yeah, or it's a sign of weakness. Yeah,
it could not be further from the truth. Again, let's say we had known each other back then, and you would have been like, George, you know how to be fit. Like, can you give me some pointers? Man, I would have jumped through hoops to help you out because you would have been actually willing to put it into action. You know what I mean? And that honors me. He's like, oh, Dave trusts me with his problem to solve it for him. Like 99 out of 100 men are going to be like, yeah, man, I got you. Let's knock it out. So if you're in this, whatever you're dealing with, and you feel like, oh, if I ask for help from someone I know and trust, I'm just going to burden them. They're busy people. No, man, ask. I assure you, he's going to be honored that you reached out and thought of him to be the one to help you with your problem. So just wherever you guys are listening to this, always ask for help from other masculine friends. They'll have your back.
Ideally, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Ask for help from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. If Arnold could just, that'd be great.
But the pain of change has to become less than the pain of staying the same, right? I mean, that's the base thing. And one of the things I always tell my son is that a man who fears pain more than failure or change will taste both. And that's just, I mean, that's one of those core things that you have to come to realization. And I think that if you don't, that the world's going to brutally show you those realizations, and then you're going to realize, hey, I got to get on this bandwagon. I got to change something. The regrets building up. Like, if you're not even wanting to see the consequences of the lack of things, it's obviously it's one of those things. And I'm so glad that you gave us like some key points, like not being able to bend over and tie your shoes, the plane thing. So
Yeah.
but man, I commend you. It's amazing that you've gotten this far, and I'm proud of you.
You talked to doctors. I'm sure they gave you options like Ozempic. What's made you decide to do this journey without medications, without thinking, weight loss surgery, something more intense like that? What was the idea there?
So yes, interestingly enough, when I first had that discussion, I think it was that time period where it was all like a shortage or something. So the initial discussion did involve Ozempic, but at the time I think it was we probably couldn't get it for you, so you might have to start this on your own. So that was one factor. I think that was back when like you couldn't get it, or maybe it was only for like diabetes, and I didn't technically have it. I was only pre, and then that was part of it. But other medication was discussed pretty early on, and there was a few things that combined. One was just a general fear, I think, of like side effects or needing to be like medicated on a daily basis. Like yes, I think it probably would be better than being over 400 pounds, and especially if all those numbers got worse. I know that's going to cause debate whether it would or wouldn't, but it was definitely trading one negative for at least another negative at some level. So my discussion, that was interestingly, lifestyle changes were only brought up by me initially in that first doctor's visit, and I think it was probably because I had started a few
Well, that
months
says
earlier.
a lot about the medical system,
It
don't it?
was, yeah, it was, yeah. And so, but my response was, can I come back in 90 days, and if these numbers, have improved, can we continue that route? Not that I'm completely against all of the medication, but I want it to be a secondary option and not the primary option. Especially because the thing they were really pushing at the time was Ozempic, and again, in mid 2022, I think it was much harder to get, or it cost like $1 million or something. And so I don't want. This is going to sound odd to say, but like the first 50, 60 pounds, once I had, even when my workouts weren't even remotely dialed in because I'd never set foot in a gym before and my diet was still pretty much a mess, because I was getting even just like 5,000 or 6,000 steps a day, and because I was not eating fast food and junk food and having no liquid calories and no having like getting from four something to in the 350s to 340s happened pretty quickly and without me having to really know what I was doing at all, which was good because I really didn't. So that second doctor's visit did happen 90 days later, and I was not down anywhere near as much as I wanted, maybe like 16 pounds in 3 months, maybe 17. But they were very impressed. He was, I guess, because they normally don't see that, right? People who say that don't, or they don't. I don't know. Anyways, it was underwhelming to me, but more than he wanted. So weirdly enough, it's now been 3 years. We've never discussed medication again. And now he's much more on board, and I don't know. To me, is reading a lot more than I should into it. It feels like he's more comfortable having this discussion, but maybe he gets pushback if he starts with that, early on, and saying, "Oh, actually, like you should clean get your life in order," instead of just giving out a bunch of. I don't know. He feels much more comfortable, maybe because I know him more. But that first doctor's appointment was pretty discouraging, but also like at the same time motivating, because I knew I had other stuff I had to work. Like I had to work on it. Like for some reason, again, seeing the numbers beyond just the scale at 30 after I've been working for months was like, okay, like yes, I know the scale's gotten better because it's not speaking English to me, but I can't end up on like 4 medications before I'm 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
If it was me, I'm just gonna be real with you. I'd have fired that doctor because My wife's a physician, and she's a pediatric dentist, and I can tell you right now, if she didn't tell somebody's parents that their kids weren't doing right or doing something, she's just failing at her job. So your doctor is a crap bag, sorry, for not, looking you in the face and saying, hey, dude, you have a problem. Let's figure this out together. Here's what I know. Here's what we can do some research, and then kind of get you interested. But I won't go down that rabbit hole. So that being said, I guess my question would to you is, everybody has something that kind of helps them dig deep. For me personally, it's always been anxiety, loss of a loved one. I just kind of use those to kind of get a little further in my workouts and kind of get that extra oomph. What would that be for you, out of curiosity? Because motivation can be fleeting, but things like that, like deep emotions, can really push you, to greater heights.
Yeah. It's interesting. So at this point in time, it's fear of failure, which is sort of because I feel like now I've come so far and I've built so much that even, I don't know how to say it. On most days at this point, I'm not motivated. It's a combination of routine and the fact that I know that everyone at this point knows I'm doing it, expects me to do it, and will know pretty quickly if 2 days pass in a row and I don't have a gym selfie. It's what's he doing? What's he doing? Is he 500 pounds again? No, I just didn't go to the gym for 2 days. But no, you know what I mean? So it's I don't know. Yeah, I don't never gotten that question again. It's definitely fear of failure. That definitely pervades. That's not the right word. That's pervasive throughout more than just this. I see that also and when I went to college, I was pushing too hard. It was if I don't start, it doesn't matter, right? That's where I was at over 4. But once I start, it has to do the thing, and it can take a long time. But I have to keep going, and I have to do the thing. And there definitely is a fear there. Maybe failure is not the right word. Failure, failure, fear of failure for sure. Yeah.
Dave, during your 3-year journey, have you wanted to quit it all? Have you hit a significant point where you said, I can't do this anymore. This is too hard, and I'm over it. I'm done.
So very early on, that was by far the hardest. I don't think I wanted to quit. I have wanted at certain points to back off or to maybe not do it at 4:30 in the morning, to make some drastic enough changes that I think it would impact my results. I think it would also impact my online presence. That would and probably reduce it, right? And it has certainly gotten substantially harder, and that has been at times can be frustrating, not to the point of wanting to quit. Again, I do think once that first couple months passed, the routine took over from the motivation, and the fear of failure backed it up. And it's so and again, this plays in a little bit to other things, but now that I am, expecting to have a son, the fact that I have an early morning routine, I think I don't want to give that up, right? Early on, it was all based around the team I was working on. They were mostly in Asia, so the times all worked out. And now it's more it works for the rest of my life, and will probably work with having a baby. Don't know, gonna find out. But and so yeah. Sorry, to answer your question, it has gotten slower. It's gotten more frustrating, and I've wanted to make changes, but I've never wanted to give up or stop. Except again, the first 5 weeks, I wanted to give up every single day. So I mean, I guess that it was miserable. I was still getting an error. I was still over 400 pounds. It was just it felt like it was a waste. So I guess if you go all the way back to that first month, yeah. But after that, no. Because once I got, even though it was whatever it was, 399 point something, I have it somewhere. That was enough to get me to that first doctor's appointment. And again, they were very unimpressed with 370, but I was 370. That's basically 199. Yeah, it's been easily the hardest thing I've done, but no, never wanted to quit.
Get ready, buddy.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
You're about to go through that gauntlet, dude.
Yeah.
No, so I was going to offer you some encouragement, but also ask a question as well. So as a dad with 3 kids under 3, I can tell you right now, the hardest thing you're ever going to do is rearing that child when you have 0 sleep, and you're adjusting to your schedule. I'll say this personally, I have not made it to the gym in a long time, and I'm kind of pissed at myself because I'm starting to see some health deficits. We'll put it there. I've had a lot more anger. I've had more anxiety than I've had in a long time, and I'm just kind of failing all around. And I didn't do that with the first two kids. I worked out through the entire thing, and I stayed in a routine. And I can tell you right now, I had more energy, I felt better, and I was a better dad and husband when I did those things. So my advice to you is stick with it, no matter how hard it is, even if you do weights at home or you just go run in the neighborhood. Make sure you're doing that. Make time for yourself. Be selfish. It is okay to do that because a lot of guys won't do that, and then they fail, and that's kind of what I've done to myself. But I guess my question for you is, what do you have planned, or do you have any other motivating factors right now besides, obviously the baby and your health as a father, that are going to kind of help you push through and keep that current agenda and plan going?
Well, I guess a few things. One, I'm not at my goal yet, and I would like to be there before the baby is born. But again, like, it does slow down, so that it continues to be for sure a motivating factor. And then in terms of how to manage it, again, I don't think any plan I make would survive contact with the baby, right? So I think there's a limited amount that I could do, but I have considered. For whatever reason, I've never been interested in a home gym. I know people who have them, love them, and will like never go to a commercial gym. But for me, the Planet Fitness is like 1 mile away. At the moment, it has everything I need, and it's part of the routine to get there and go that gets that keeps me going. Especially because for a long time I was remote, so it was like that was my thing to get me up in the morning on weekdays. But I am thinking about doing some hybrid version so that if I can't get to the gym as often, which I think is probably going to happen for sure, I can still get it in when I'm at home. And then my hope is that combined with the fact that I haven't reached my goal, and like one topic, like not particularly relevant necessarily for this conversation, is my wife is on a similar journey and like will be obviously taking a pause now that she's pregnant, but that is sort of like a very close to me, but also external motivating factor. And so I think and hope I don't see why not that would remotivate me once she's through having our son. And then also I do hope that I don't again hard for me to say, but I do hope that Alvin serves as a motivating factor in and of himself, just because I couldn't imagine having a kid and like we in the future where we don't want an only child in theory. I couldn't imagine having one or multiple kids back at 400 pounds. I mean, it was hard enough to get through a remote accounting day job without any exercise at 400 pounds, and I didn't have to move, right? So I just can't imagine with a couple of kids. I mean, I can't imagine now doing it normally, but certainly not at over 400 pounds.
I wanted to chime in real quick. I know, George, you're probably about to say something. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry. So you did say you mentioned your wife is going to back off of working out. My suggestion would be don't let that happen. My wife did not for our first pregnancy, and I'll tell you right now, she was 10 times better for it, and the baby was as healthy as can be. We had a doctor that was not, exactly pushing her to continue, and we actually swapped doctors, and that doctor was like, yeah, you should continue working out. It is healthy for the baby. Just don't do, crazy, strenuous, like...
Scale back 80%. Yeah, much easier exercise.
You mean you should deadlift like 7,000 pounds?
Yeah, don't deadlift or squat, 500 pounds, but, continue working out. I would say 100% have her keep moving towards the goal while she's pregnant, because it will make her feel better, especially at the end of everything. So
yeah, I think that's good advice. And she has had the opposite experience as me with doctors. Her doctor is already increasing the amount of exercise. She wants her to keep going. It's very much awesome. Very much the other flip side of the coin.
Yeah,
I love to hear that.
So Dave, I say this pretty frequently. It's something I believe in pretty firmly, that a man learns a lot about himself by doing things physically, and obviously losing weight and having to like get into a routine or whatever. That's a really good teaching tool for men, for themselves, from themselves, for themselves, and about themselves. Is there anything in this entire journey that surprised you about yourself? Something you've learned along the way that you had no idea you were going to gain from all this? Not anything physical, but more on the mental or emotional side of the house.
I would say two things. One of them might be a little less serious, but the first one is it's really important to have a community. And I mentioned this earlier, to ask for help. And I don't think men do it particularly well. I really don't think American men do it particularly well. But I think one of the reasons I had, of course, attempted to lose weight before, one was I think I took the wrong approach in terms of diet and exercise, trying to mirror what worked for other people versus figuring out what worked for me. But also, trying to bottle it all up and just do it by myself, as opposed to either doing it with other people or at least asking other people for help. So that, like, no man is an island thing, very much didn't understand it 10 years ago. Very much understand it more. I think it probably also applies very much to fatherhood. Like um, my family, who I'm close with, live 700, 800 miles away. I moved down here to the deep south. I'm from New England. That's why I don't sound like I'm from the deep south. But my wife, her whole family lives in the same county in Georgia and has lived there forever. And like, will live there forever. And we're working on moving.
Good.
We're not that far away, moving closer there, because, and one of the reasons I'm so on board with doing like a drastic move theoretically while she's pregnant, even though we only live like 150 miles away, is because it's such a clear benefit to have like 200 family members in the two counties around you.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so I would say community is a big one, and it plays a lot into mental health as well. And the other one is, which is like very, very different and on a lot less serious, but I enjoy cooking substantially more than I thought I would. Um, it wasn't that I ever disliked cooking, I just never did it. And it was also something that my mom always did. And if it wasn't burgers, my dad pretty much didn't do it because he was working. And so when I started doing it, it was a combination of like making sure I knew the ingredients I was eating, making sure I was getting the actual measurements I thought I was getting. Um, and now it's become more of something that I find like calming. It's almost a routine as well, a very different routine that I can't quite put my finger on it, but I enjoy it substantially more than I thought I would. And it seems to also improve my mental health, not just me getting whatever food I want. And like almost beyond the weight loss, like never in a million years would have guessed that a couple of years ago. Like not a chance, not a chance.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a great thing to learn about yourself. So
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I moved from Missouri to Florida. I took a pretty decent pay cut, but I have family here. And when I had my son, I realized it's so important. Having that community, having that family is everything, because you will need help and they will be so happy to see their grandbaby that
Yeah.
they're just going to want to hang out with Alvin as much as possible, and you're going to
Mhm.
absolutely love it. So it's going to be great. So question for you. Your wife is pregnant now. You'd mentioned before the show started that she had kind of a challenging first trimester. Do you have any advice for guys who maybe have a pregnant wife, things that did work for you, things that didn't work for you, that you might be able to help those guys with?
I, that's a good question. So my wife was very tired during her first trimester, pretty early on, and had a lot of morning sickness. And so and I had no idea. Like I had like read about those things, but it's very different when it actually happens, and how rapidly it seems to come on, and how like intense it is. At least it was for her. I think one of the things in hindsight that perhaps I could have done better was just that now that she's in the middle of her second trimester, that's completely changed. So from one like month or semester or trimester to another, it can be drastically different. Her energy is like at normal, maybe beyond pre-pregnancy level of energy. On top of the fact that the morning sickness is almost completely gone, replaced by like other interesting like food aversions or smell aver, all sorts of weird stuff. But the key, I think, to me has been that like listening to her, which is I know some guys are going to find annoying, is way more important than I think it was, because I've never gone through this and I never will. And when you read about it online or anywhere, like they'll say something in passing like you should be supportive and like listen to your wife, but no, like you really should, because it's changing rapidly and she's probably a little bit thrown off by it. And it seems to be very different for different women. Like my mom said something different than what her mom said, and that didn't necessarily line up with what she was experiencing either. And it's like, yeah, like some of this, they all overlap. You can tell that they're going through like generally the same thing, but on a day to day basis, like substantially more, I guess, variation than I would have expected, and then completely flipped. So I don't necessarily want to give hard advice this early on in the process, but listening was very important and understanding how rapidly things are changing just because like she's growing a human and like it only takes whatever
Yeah.
39
Does
weeks
she
or
have the
something.
cravings yet?
Just
Does she
started.
have wild cravings? Just
Yes.
get her whatever she wants. I assure you.
It's been really interesting. Again, like
It'll
as
be
far
the
as
weirdest
like,
combination, but you'll want to vomit hearing the combination thing. Just
yes,
get it. Just go pick
Pickles
it
and
up.
vanilla ice
Get it.
cream. What?
yes,
Just do it.
yeah, for sure. Also, she not a while. What her earliest craving, which I was was for red meat, which is very interesting. She's lost a lot of weight, but has not pivoted to the red meat as much as I have. She will eat chicken whenever I'll eat steak. Like that's just how it is. And now she's eaten more red meat in the last 2 or 3 months than in the last 2 or 3 years easily. Not particularly weird to me. And like my thing is it must be Alvin who likes it because he's my son, and so like that makes
Yeah,
sense.
your
But
son's a
I don't, I
carnivore,
don't
man.
really
Breeding a
know.
little, breeding a little barbarian, a little
That's exactly
Conan
right.
is going to come out of
That's
the womb.
exactly right. But yes, the cravings are,
Chiseled.
you can tell, are kicking in that second trimester. And I think they will get
The
better.
doctor's going to pick up the baby, and slap the button. He goes, "What is best in life?"
That's exactly right.
Put that cookie down, Dustin.
Well, I'm glad you guys did the Arnold impersonation. So Arnold is obviously a legend, and he took you under his wing. What was one piece of advice that he gave you that stuck with you, maybe even for fatherhood?
Let's see. He randomly, well, it was random to me on very short notice, offered to fly me out to work out with me in at Gold's Venice with maybe 20 hours of notice right after the first Arnold Classic I went to, which they had invited me to as well. And so of course I said yes. And it was like a red eye trip out there across the country, and then a red eye back like 16 hours later. It was in the middle of the week. But after we worked out, which was mostly a blur, and I don't quite remember most of it because it was just like I have the video of it, which is good, but I don't remember any of that happening. And there was other people there, and one of them was famous, and they kept saying he's in Gladiator. And I don't know. He's not Arnold, and I'm already way over my head here. But anyways, and then he randomly, as he was biking away, he said like Dave comes to breakfast and whatever his voice is, and then like to one of his aides, and we went to this place for breakfast, and he talks about all sorts of topics, like whatever he wants to, tells great stories, but it will bounce from like California solar panels to like Hollywood stuff, pranks he used to pull, all the way to like bodybuilding stuff very rapidly. But throughout the whole thing, he would talk a lot about vision, how important vision was to like everything he had done and how it applied to all these different topics. And later on, like after that, of course, I didn't know at the time, I would go back and find like this has been a theme in speeches he's given, it shows up in books he's written, but it's very organic to him. You can tell it's how he like built his whole life. Whatever the topic is, the vision is what goes through it all. And so in hindsight, like when stuff has gotten harder, that has always stuck with me. That like it was that he knew where he wanted to be at the end, and that he wasn't there. He didn't necessarily know like all the granular steps, and it wasn't necessarily going to be like an even path to get there, but the vision was there at whatever the topic was. And it's clearly like something he's very passionate about, especially going back and seeing that he's talked about it since like at least the 90s. But it's like a big talking point of him. Dustin, he may have even mentioned it at the Arnold thing we were at, but he talks about it all the time. And it's
Well,
stuck
something
with me
all men must have vision, right?
Yeah.
And it's that much more important now that you have a child on the way. And I think this is what causes a lot of men to end up just going through the motions, and then their marriage gets cold. They're not really involved with their kids and all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily because they're bad guys. It's they don't have actual vision. They haven't actually thought ahead to the end point. They don't have any North Star. So like we train this in Elite Sentinel aggressively, me and Brandon. Dustin just did it with us, and That's one of the core things we teach at the very beginning of the process, because as a man, whether you're single, married, or have kids, any of it, if you haven't plotted that vision of your future, that's what your legacy is derived from. It's that the journey to that end point. And there, like you said, we may not know all the steps along the way, but if you haven't even thought about that and you've got like a kid on the way, that's your wake-up call, man. Like, time to start thinking about this kind of stuff. So I'm not surprised to hear that Arnold said that, because that applies. Like, there's tiers of it too, right? Your family vision, for your business, for whatever it may be, right? But as a man, that's our role, is to think ahead, calculate all the variables, mitigate risk, all that kind of thing, and drive forward towards the end goal. Obviously, life's going to happen and push us off course, but we redirect back on course. And as fathers and as husbands, it's our job to take on that burden so that our wives can nurture our children and kind of handle the inner world of the family, and it's our job to kind of handle the outer world. So I love that he said that. It's near and dear to my heart too.
Yeah, and I think the beautiful irony of that is that when you have an intense vision with extreme discipline, you create community. So a great example, you created your community on X. Like, you didn't hide. You had your authentic name and your journey posted on there, and you were asking for genuine help, and you created a community there because of your vision, right? And then you met Arnold because of that, and Arnold helped you, and many others have helped you. And so, it's super important that we strive in a certain way, because it attracts that kind of community that we want, that will lift us up, and that will help make sure that we hold ourselves accountable. And it's such an important thing. And X is kind of one of those things for you that was a different variable. Maybe you could talk a little bit on that, like how that's part of your journey there, right? That community kind of became that accountability, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to do fairly early on, not on X, it was on Instagram, because again, like, that's not what X that's not what X is normally for. At least not back when it was Twitter. Was I wanted to document it, at least semi-publicly. Again, I was never thinking like this. It was more like for family and friends, but under my own name, so that if I got frustrated and didn't see progress, perhaps I would have things that I could look back on easily. Again, I was thinking Instagram, because they have that like grid of all the pictures and you can just scroll easily. Was not thinking it was Twitter at the time. And so that was one of the things that I looked back on early on and thought maybe this is one of the reasons it didn't work for me in the past, was because I tried to do it all myself, and I tried to bottle it all up, and I tried to keep it very private, and I wouldn't, like, my closest family didn't know, my closest friends didn't know. I was single, I was living alone at the time. That was during the remote work era, so I wasn't even going into an office. So this was attempting to take somewhat of a polar opposite. And right, absolutely, I thought it'd be cool one day if I had followers. I think it's weird when people on social media say that that's not a goal, because like, it obviously is. That's why everyone's posting. But very specifically, it wasn't about Twitter, because Twitter was for politics and was like, I don't know, breaking news, right? And back then, there was even less in terms of like video support and whatever they're doing now. But I started posting someone at some point on Instagram where I was getting no traction, and which was fine, but I was still posting every day. It was like, you should post these. Like, why aren't you just posting them on all the apps? And I was like, I guess that's like not a bad point. Like, why? It would take me another 30 seconds. It's not like, and I just never, again, I wasn't like I didn't use social media before that personally, except for like an old Facebook account from like college. And so like the concept of cross posting or whatever was just foreign to me. But I started doing it, and for whatever reason, Twitter and then X really took off. And so yes, like recently, like again, I've been having more of a strategy now, doing more shorts, because I know that's what works. That's what all the platforms are pushing, is like short form video. And I don't particularly like it personally, but it's where the growth is, especially if you're in like the fitness space and you're showing before and afters. But my favorite platform by far is still X, and it's still where the like truly, I think of it as like the truly organic community grew without me needing any type of strategy. And it's still where I go every day to talk to people who give me advice, where I give advice. It's the only platform I feel like I have real conversations with people on. It's the only platform I've met anyone in real life from. It's so I know it gets, these days it gets a lot of flack for various different things going on that I don't partake in. But it's easily my most important community. It's easily my most important accountability tool at this point, and by far my favorite social media app. Like
Yeah.
it's not
I
even
mean,
it's the only app. It's the only social media app I open on my phone when I'm bored without thinking about it. Like Instagram, I have an alarm because I'm like, fuck it, I open Instagram. Like, so it's such an annoying platform. And I just don't know why. It doesn't even do anything to me. It's fine. Like, but X is the exact opposite. X, I have to have one of those limiters that says I've had enough, like log off now. I couldn't tell you why. And again, 3 years ago, not a chance anyone would have guessed, including myself, that I would be, I don't know how many, 100,000 tweets at this point. I don't know, like a lot, too many probably.
yeah, and I think Arnold would agree with you. I mean, he's pushing the Pump Club on
Yep.
X,
Yep.
and that's where I found a lot of his articles and newsletters and all those good things. So
Yeah, for sure. One other quick
Yeah.
thing about him is going back a little bit. I don't even know, to the prior question about taking stuff from him. The other thing I was going to mention is, I just thought of this, is he very much talks about where he comes from a lot. And I'm not sure if it's like a humility thing or just like a remembering your roots type of thing. But like I got a tour of his office afterwards, and there was all sorts of crazy stuff, like the Conan the Barbarian sword. I have a picture of me holding up all his awards, like the full size Terminator replicas are in there. The gun that he shoots from the motorcycle in Terminator 2, like all sorts of stuff. That was in the bathroom. But like all like full of it. And he does talk about it, but what he talks about 5 times more. I heard this story over and over again at this one breakfast because he was insistent that before we go to the office, um, his social media manager take us by this brick wall that he had laid in the 60s when he first came here from Austria, because his first job was bricklaying. And we needed the only thing he requested, not me holding a Conan sword or whatever, he wanted a selfie of us standing in front of this wall, because he wanted to make sure it was still there and in good condition. And like that wall, he talked about all the time. Like he used to take all the money from bricklaying and he would save it and he would buy these tiny little apartments. I didn't know this. He made a ton of money in real estate, and then he would go exercise, and like that's what he did. He bricklayed, he exercised, and he saved money to buy apartments. And that story and that wall, and it was because I guess most of the other like areas have been redeveloped, so the walls aren't there anymore. He knew exactly where it was. It's not marked on Google Maps. It's just some random address, and it's just some random rundown wall. And like I have a selfie. I posted it. Nobody knows what it is, of me and the social media manager standing in front of this brick wall. And that's the only picture we had to send to Arnold before we went to his office, to show him the wall was still there and to make sure that that his story had been reinforced by me actually seeing the wall. There's no plaque. I mean, it's not, he's the only one I'm sure who knows like the address, but like it very much has stuck with me as like a remembering your roots type of thing. And again, like the stories about the early days were clearly the ones he was most passionate about and the ones he told the most. Because when I got to the office, I was like, there's like a million things here. I don't even like know where to start. And part of the reason I don't know is because he talked a lot about that wall and not a lot about like whatever's in here. There's like a full size alligator, like taxidermied alligator under a pool table, and like I'm sure that's a reference to something I don't know. And like, but like I know a lot about the wall, and so that has stuck with me. That stuck with me as well.
So what is your son's middle name and why is it Arnold?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people ask that online.
Nice. So what, Dave? What made you pick Alvin for your son's name? You picked it pretty early. You're pretty adamant about that. Is there a special attachment to that name?
Yeah. So weirdly, my wife had his name. Well, if it was a boy, she knew exactly what to name. If it was a girl, we had no idea. We like really, I mean, like mostly her, right? But like, so Alvin is my late grandfather's name, and like we were very close, and so like he gave me this necklace on my bar mitzvah. I've worn it every day ever since. Like we were like very that's who Alvin is. And also I'm named for my grandfather David on the same side of the family, so that works. And so that was fairly easy. The other thing was my dad, who's like Italian Catholic, and I think this might be a tradition there. I'm not sure. Every guy is named Joseph, so there's already like 5 of them. his grandfather, his father, my dad, my brother, his son, they've all got the same name because they have the same last name and first name. So I was like, much as I like Joseph Danna, I don't need like a sixth one. and so finding a name for a son, my wife had that picked out maybe even before she was pregnant, probably, and then a girl's name was substantially harder, but we didn't need that, so it worked out.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, Joe the Sixth might get a little hard to say everywhere you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. The
Um,
pictures of like the 4 or 5 of them all together, before the older one
yeah,
passed away, they're pretty cool. But we just didn't need a sixth one.
yeah. All right. Well, so a phenomenon when people are expecting, especially first-time parents. Everyone's got advice. Everyone's got all these things to say to you. Oh, this, that. What's the dumbest thing you've heard so far? Or the thing that you like heard it and you're like instantly knew like that's terrible advice.
So that's a little bit different. Let me think. I think the craziest thing that I'm learning now is how much things have changed. Even since like when I was little, like my mother-in-law was talking about when she gave birth to my wife, that like the skin on skin contact that like is incredibly important early on was just like not done. And the baby was just like taken away and put in like a hospital nursery and like taken care of and whatever. But like it wasn't like, and now this is not probably not the craziest. So right before this, we toured the, what do we call it, maternity ward at the hospital like 2 hours ago. And so like they were talking about how they were stressing how like, well, for the first like 2 or 3 hours, like the baby like stays with you. Like we don't even take the baby with you. We come and like check the vitals like while the baby is like on you, and like then a few hours later, maybe we take it away to get whatever done it needs done if it needs anything. But even then, maybe not. And so then my mother-in-law was mentioning, yeah, that wasn't like they took the baby away pretty quick, did a whole bunch of stuff. Like it was this hospital, at least where we toured, didn't even have like a nursery room where all the babies went because the babies stayed with the mother. And like to me, that's obvious and what you would always have done. But like both my mother-in-law and then I texted my mom on the way home. It was like, no, like there was definitely like there definitely some time with the baby and some time without the baby where the baby left. And it's wild to me how rapidly things seem to have changed. And then I will add one more, which is very unique and like sort of comes with the territory, and I don't put a whole lot into it, but like whenever you post anything about babies on social media, just insane levels of you should do this, you shouldn't do that. Like you get the normal stuff like about vaccines, but like also just crazy, like well beyond what I get when I talk about what I have for diet or anything else. Just like the opinions run incredibly deep, and I guess because like that's how you raise your kids, so like you're not gonna admit that you didn't do it right, or you're gonna always think you did it the best. But like it has made me like rethink how much I will and won't post of him. Like I wasn't planning on posting much to start with, and now it's like even less. But still like just levels that I really haven't seen before of just like the even like I posted a few like things about getting an ultrasound. The number of people who are like, you can't get ultrasounds, like you don't get it. I was like, they're kind of normal. Like I'm not like don't we all get like, isn't that how there's like a baby? I don't know, like just I'm saying the wild, or even like
How many of them had a degree? I'll tell you, zero.
how many of them had a real name.
Well, it's just like, every time something happens, everyone's a foreign policy expert, and then everyone's
They
a
all
tariff
pivot.
expert, and then
Yeah.
everyone's an economist, and then everyone's
Yeah.
a political consultant. So, yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that.
And
But
that
one
and
thing
that
we kind of collectively do
yeah.
advise is find a system that works for your family and ignore what everyone else says.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a parent, okay,
Mhm.
great, thanks. It's working for our kid. We're going to keep them on their schedule and appreciate the input. We've had actually on this show a lot of experts kind of agree with that exact same principle. So there you go. That's from us to you. Just find something that's working for you and your wife and your son, and if it's working, it's working. So the first 6 months is basically just keeping them alive.
That's good to know.
All right, I think Brandon has a real question for you now.
Yeah. So, Dave, you've been through a lot of transformations. You went from lonely to married. You went from overweight and out of shape and your health rapidly declining to being very healthy, losing 140 pounds. You went from being massively in debt to being financially stable and successful with a good job. What's the biggest lesson from all these transformations that you're already thinking about passing on to your kid?
Ooh, that's good. I think, well, so one thing I didn't realize, I'm not exactly sure, I guess I have a few years to figure out how to articulate it better before he'll be able to understand it, but how similar all of those things are, even though they're very disparate in terms of like paying off credit card debt really doesn't have anything to do with, lifting, but like it actually does. And I don't think, not that I don't think, I couldn't have done just one of them. It had to happen more holistically or it wouldn't have worked. Looking back, when I attempted to lose weight like a dozen times prior to getting an error on my scale, it was like a hyper focus on, I don't know, cardio and eating salads, excluding all the mental health and the loneliness and the $40,000 in credit card debt and everything else that was partially driving the binge eating or the drinking. And so doing them alone and tackling them one at a time, even though I understand there's some logic to that, it didn't work for me repeatedly. And tackling them all at least somewhat at the same time with somewhat the same approach, even though you would think it would be overwhelming and chaotic, turned out not to be, at least thus far, because largely the same approach went into each of them, even though they're very different. And I can't imagine I could be here right now having like improved my physical and mental health, but not improved my relationships, my financial health, my spiritual, because I don't think they're too intertwined. And I think earlier on, I definitely didn't realize that. Certainly wouldn't have admitted it. I would never have talked about mental health, right? And so I don't know how to package that up quite yet for my son, but I think it's a critical lesson coming out of all this, at least so far. And I did mention it a second ago, but I try to talk about it more now, and I'm not good at it because I just think it's just very, again, it's one of those topics that's very hard to talk about online, especially for men. But there has to be a way that we can talk about mental health without, well, in a way that maintains its like masculinity and works for men while still being able to discuss the topic. And I don't know what that is, but it would be nice if someone smarter than me figured it out, like before Alvin has to figure it out, right? Because it's definitely a huge part of my journey that I don't fully understand yet. But I think it's pretty critical to a lot of issues that I went through and that I see everywhere, basically.
Yeah, there's certainly a balance.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah,
have all those pillars healthy so that you keep them in balance, right? Because if
yeah,
one suffers, all suffer. So,
yeah.
yeah, and that's I'm writing about that, so I firsthand understand that. But that's great, man. I love that would help your kid be set up for some major success in the future for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate
Dave, anything you're scared about?
it.
About being a dad?
Yeah,
Anything you're worried about?
yes. Well, yeah. So weirdly, I've talked about this with Katie Beth, my wife. It's almost the opposite of what she's more worried about, which I guess makes sense because she's the one who's actually pregnant. Hers are a lot more around like early on having a son, right? She is most close with her mother. She only has a sister. She doesn't have any brothers. So like that's a she's not a guy. So like that's a big concern. And like those first like initial years, she's much more comfortable. I think with girls than guys. We were both very happy that our firstborn's going to be a son. Like that's we would have loved both, but that is what we preferred, and so that was good. But that so I know that's one of her concerns. Mine is basically the opposite. I think those early times and years are going to be like fairly natural. People have been doing this for a long time. Like that's like the keeping the baby alive type of thing. I think I'm going to be good at that and hopefully enjoy, even though be really sleep deprived and whatnot. But when Alvin gets a little bit older, and we start encountering things that are very modern and very new, and something that like my parents and my grandparents didn't encounter because the technology didn't exist or the terminology didn't exist or the culture didn't exist, that I feel like, again, like it's kind of lucky, I guess, because it's not immediate, but for sure that's my biggest concern. Is I feel like I was very blessed to grow up, although I did not believe so at the time, and like a basically in the woods in New Hampshire where like there was no cell phone coverage, they still can't get cable TV, they still can't get high speed internet, like very good school district and all that, but like there wasn't all of this stuff. And then now I feel like it's far not just technology. I don't want to over focus on that, but the culture was far different even than it was now. And like not that it's better or worse, but wildly different than even what I grew up with. And like trying to get a son through all of that, especially when it's even more critical, like for higher education and all this stuff that like for whatever reason guys seem to be like very struggle with more than girls. That at the moment scares and concerns me far more than like I don't know the younger years, which seem to me to be like maybe more taxing and we get a lot less sleep, but also none of those bigger existential questions that like I don't
Right. Yeah,
know.
if only there was this great podcast with like over
There you
110
go.
episodes dedicated to fatherhood. It'd
There
be
you go.
you'll be set. No, I'm kidding. Those are very valid concerns, man.
Someone should do that.
Yeah, someone should start that. Yeah. No, valid concerns, man. It is the world is ever changing, but I think we've seen it now. Like I said, through over 110 episodes and a lot of different fathers being on the show, is just be involved with your kids, become a student of your children, understand what makes them tick, and just guide them in their journey. And you can block out all the noise. That it's being a present, involved father is literally all that's required, and everything else follows suit. So you don't have to be perfect, and you'll figure it out one day at a time. So we're excited for you, man. Hey, where can everyone find you? Obviously, X is a huge platform. I know you've got your YouTube going on. So I was peeping. You're at like 73,500 subs. We're at 67,000. So we're gonna do a little friendly competition here and see who gets to 100K first. It's gonna be a little bit of a race now. You get a little head start. But we'll catch you. So seriously though, where can people follow you, bro?
I'm Dave E. Danna on pretty much every platform. It's just if it's me and a Planet Fitness, you're at the right account.
Awesome, man. Any final thoughts for the audience?
No, just thank you so much for having me. It's a little bit different, but a very exciting, topic of the podcast. Very glad that I qualified, and my pleasure being here.
Yeah, brother. It was great to officially have you on. We are so excited for you. Fatherhood is like hands down the best experience. I'm so excited to just watch your journey from afar. And if you ever need any advice, reach out. Of course, we'll be here for you. And once the baby is here, we'll have to have you back for part 3, and we'll see how it's going. But man, I just your story is so awesome, and I just love how humble you are about it and being willing to share your journey so that others can heal and grow. And so if you're out there, definitely check out Dave. He will inspire you for sure. He has overcome quite a bit. He's very candid with his story. So I think, Dave, that's all any of us can do is just live the right way to be, right? Lead by example, live it. And we can kind of be that source for someone else to find the strength. So thank you for being one of those types of guys. Your family is in good hands, brother. So with that, we'll close. Fathers, let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today. Okay, and now we're going to do something silly before we stop recording. So Arnold might see this, right? So let's show off our Arnold shirts. We can go with Dustin first. Check that one out, Arnold Classic. And then Brandon, what's yours doing over there? What's it say? Come with me if you want to lift. And mine's not an Arnold shirt, but it's you can't get beefy eating leafy. Here we go.
I like that one. That's very impressive.
Got to get the guns.
That's right.
Just
I
the
wish
classic
I wish I
That's
had
all your
mine
lifts
on.
lift.
Oh, so Dave, real talk though, here, legit, you will never need to work biceps with your infant and toddler because you are going to be doing like a constant bicep curl, bro. You'll get the vein popping like so
That's awesome,
fast,
Dave.
and your shoulders because you'll be like trying to do everything with one hand, and you're like traps and
Legit.
shoulders
He's
and
not
upper
wrong.
arm. It's everything else you're gonna have to work, but yeah, dude, the
Yeah,
dad
you might
bicep.
still have. Yeah, they're real. You might still have some skinny legs like George. That's the only concern you might have. No, just
And I got my biceps, baby. They didn't go down. Oh, I love it, dude.